when 39 Soviet commandos defeated hundreds of Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Soviet was taking a sigh of relief when the Cold War was about to end in Afghanistan. There were waves of attack remaining to fight off. Hundreds of Afghani jihadist rebels were not ready to surrender or retreat. These militants were popularly known as Mujahideen, and the US was supporting them. Mujahideen were super scary, and they were known for their savage cruelty. This terrorist group was left defeated in the Battle of Hill 3234. They had to face the death and injuries of more than 200 militants. Only a handful of Soviet commandos won against hundreds of well-trained Mujahideen militants. This was one of those best victories in the history of Russian military operations. We are going to understand those strategies and steps how 39 soldiers paced and accomplished the mission. How did Battle of the Hill 3234 start? This incident begins back in time when the Soviet-Afghan War continued for more than 10 years from 1979. However, this battle brought a massive decrease in the Russian economy, but they won the battle in the end. Soviets shielded the whole town of Khost in the 1980s, which was once partially besieged by Mujahideen in years-long conflict. This grasp of Mujahideen forces was strong over the city because Pakistani Secret Services ISI was supporting them, using guerrilla warfare to counter Mujahideen. Mujahideen used to apply guerrilla warfare tactics to face their enemies. Keeping those tactics of militant, super enemies in mind, Soviets trained their commandos with the same. By the end of 1987, Soviets in the city were left aloof and completely separated from the army. Siege by the Mujahideen became unbearable, using mannequin trick to trace militants. When Russian soldiers were all drained, and it got harder to spot hidden terrorists, they used the mannequin trick. It was a technique used to make a fake paratroopers operation that would seem real at first sight. Soviets sent a transport plane that carried dummy paratroopers and an observatory aircraft to photograph locations above it. When dummy paratroopers were dropped, Afghans treated them as real paratroopers. They opened fire and tried to shoot as many mannequins as possible, and as per plan, they committed a mistake here. Mujahideens unwillingly disclosed their location coordinates to Soviet army. Taking track of those coordinates, the Soviets started an exterminatory firefight, taking control and grip of Hill 3234. Soviet was targeting a hill that was at a challenging altitude of 3,234 meters. They wanted to take control of the hill as it was the best observatory point at such height. Soviet airlifted their 39 super-skilled veterans of the Airborne Regiment by helicopter and dropped them on the hill on January 7, 1988. Those 39 soldiers landed on the range campus of Jalaluddin Haqqani, Afghan leader of the Haqqani network. The battalion of Haqqani network was famous for its cruelty. They opened several heavy firing rounds over landed Soviet soldiers' regiment, which consisted of experienced veteran fighters. Soldiers were well fitted with techniques used by those Mujahideen troops, so it was not very surprising for them. The Soviets put their 100% effort and kept on firing to hold the grip on their position. After rounds of firing, the Mujahideen assaulted Soviet army in a group of 200,250 fighters. Afghans tried their best to force soldiers to back off, but they failed. Russian soldiers were getting all support from army headquarters on ammunition airlift of wounded soldiers. They were sure about accomplishing the mission anyway and reaching the point of victory with minimum loss. End of the war. The fight almost came to an end the following day when Mujahideen troops were fatigued from fighting. Russian commandos massively destroyed 12 assaults by the Mujahideen. Casualties and injuries. Afghans faced a massive number of casualties and injuries, which was more than 200 in the count. On the other hand, the Soviets went through very few life losses. Soviet lost the lives of 6 commandos, and 28 of the remaining 33 were injured. This victory over the Mujahideen has become a golden history in the pages of the Soviet army since then. 2 of the killed commandos were posthumously honored as Hero of the Soviet Union. Other paratroopers were honored by Order of the Red Banner and Order of the Red Star. Final words: 39 Soviet commandos winning over hundreds of trained Mujahideen troops. Paratroopers were highly prepared for the attack over the hill 3234. Although there was a lack of artillery and other resources at such high altitudes, airborne veterans were firm on their mission statement. They applied tactics like guerrilla warfare, mannequin technique and fought with great bravery to bring this conflict to an end with minimum loss to the army and maximum loss to enemy squad Mujahideen. Soviet Army's whole operation to fight jihadist Mujahideen was very successful. Thanks for watching.